Hey, Garth Jenson with Huntin here. I want to take a minute and kind of explain the Arizona draw process for everyone out there, just to help you guys draw more tags and maybe not throw your application away, but just help put yourself in a better spot to where you can draw the tag you've been waiting for all those years. So I'm going to start out by just kind of telling you how Arizona breaks down the total number of permits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 100% of the permits right here allocated. Now this is resident and non-resident. So this is the amount of permits, and when Arizona takes and they put all these permits in, they'll separate that. And the first thing they do is 20% of those permits goes into what they call the bonus pass. The bonus pass is reserved for the top point holders that apply for that unit. 80% of those permits go into what they call the first and second pass, or the random. And those are that's a random draw for everyone else that didn't get into this bonus pass or the max point draw. So that's first. And what they did last year is they changed that. So prior to 2016's draw, it used to be that heavily applied for states, or heavily applied for units, like your 10s, your 9s, units like that. All of those tags, so it's 10%, well, what I'll tell you this right here, 10% of the overall permits are set aside to non-residents. The remaining 90 is for residents only. So prior to 2016, they were, those permits, generally speaking, in those hard to draw areas, all of that 10% was gobbled up in this 20% bonus pass right here. So after 2016, or 2016 to current, Arizona changed that law to where only up to 5% of those permits, non-resident permits, 5% of the 10%, could be drawn right here. Now, both residents and non-residents can draw. I mean, they're in the same draw right here. So in theory, residents could draw all 20%, but only up to 5% can be drawn by non-residents. Now, in the case of elk, that equation really doesn't come into play. When we've looked over the draw odds, generally speaking, the non-residents have more elk points than residents. So that really doesn't come into play. So you get 5% here, and then 15% typically goes to residents. So that comes out before this ever even starts. So they go through and do all the bonus pass before they even start on the 80%, first and second or random pass. So once you get to here, well, I'll tell you what, I'll just do this. So up to 5% or 10%, 10%, with 5% being drawn on this, I'll just take this and say, okay, 5% was drawn here, so up to 5% can be drawn in this 80% for non-residents. The reason I paused on that is because if, say, you take that number away and there was only 3% drawn right there, went to non-residents, then that would, of course, change that to 17%. Now, this one would be up to 7%. So you can always draw up to 10% to the non-resident tags, but only up to 5% can be drawn in the bonus pass. The remaining number can be drawn in the random or the first and second. So kind of I don't know. It's pretty simple once you start breaking it down, but that's kind of your general. That's how that 100% of permits is allocated. So once you get through that, we'll kind of go through a scenario. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of break down some different scenarios just to kind of give you an idea of where you want to be using your points or where you want to put your application. So under the first scenario, we got 23 north. We'll just use this example, early rifle. There's 15 permits. So under this, under Arizona now, this one permit cannot be drawn in the bonus permit or in the bonus pass. So that is always going to go random. They're not eligible for that in the bonus. So even if you're this guy with 27 points over here, you know, and you think, okay, I want the best hunt in the state right now, and you apply for that, you're applying against 3,600 applicants. So the chances of you drawing this in the random are slim to none. So that's a big thing that you want to avoid, and that's one of the biggest changes, or as far as made it, you know, you used to be able to pick that up where now it's not even eligible for a guy. I mean, it is, but you're probably not going to draw. So if you look at Unit 9 archery, here's another example. We got 100 permits. You know, 10% of that's going to be 10. So up to 5 tags can be drawn in the bonus if you apply in Unit 9. The remaining 5% can be drawn in the random. So it makes sense if you are some of these guys with these higher point totals, honestly, to start putting your applications in areas like 9 or other units that have more than one permit, because now you've got chances in the draws for sure. It makes sense to kind of play that odds and stay away from units like this. You know, we take another example where it's 10 late rifle, and you can see, you know, as an example from this, why there's more people cycling through, I mean, that point gap. But this is another one where you're going to probably start to see point creep. Same as this, you'll see point creep because 10 guys used to draw this off, you know, used to always go in the bonus. So now you're taking all of those guys that were probably somewhere around this, you know, 16, 17 point level. They were all coming out, but now you're cutting that in half. So that's going to increase the amount of time it's going to take for other people to come up and draw that tag because you're carrying those point holders into the next year. But this right here in 10, I mean, you've got 40 tags available to non-residents, 10%, 20 can go in the bonus pass, 20 can go in the random. Under this scenario, this is where you might start to see maybe this number right here, instead of it being 20, you know, you might see 16 tags go there. So now that's going to bump this one up to 24 because you still, non-residents are still up to 10% can be drawn. Now understand this is up to 10%, it's not guaranteed. So residents and non-residents are in this draw together. So this by no means is a hard and fast number. You can still come to this, and there's enough, you know, there's enough residents applying that. This could come in at, say, that number, just as easy. I mean, it's just a random grab out of the hat number, but that's the way the random draw works. So that kind of gives you the scenario of anywhere from 1,500, 400 permits where a guy's going to want to start to put his points. And remember, if you want to just shoot for the moon and you're in the random draw anyways, it makes sense to probably put this as a first choice, because if you're going to be in a random draw, man, I mean, someone's got to draw that permit right here. I mean, it just as well be you. You just never know. So that's a good breakdown of where you want to put your points if you're wanting to draw a hunt.